Welcome back. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, defines mental illness as a condition that affects a person's mood, thinking, or feeling. The American Psychiatric Association explains it this way: that it is associated with distress and or problems functioning in the social, work, or family activities. The Mayo Clinic says a mental illness is thought to be caused by a variety of factors, and that it is more common in people whose blood relatives also have a mental illness. Mayo Clinic also warns that it's the leading cause of disability. Some researchers suggest multiple linking causes such as genetics, lifestyle, and environment. So continuing along that line of genetics playing a key role in contracting a mental illness, some experts believe that these certain genes may cause your risk of developing a mental illness and that your life situations may trigger it. There are still other experts who say that it's the biochemical processes, the circuits, and the basic brain structure which plays a role in being susceptible to having a mental illness. It is believed that these neurotransmitters, which are naturally occurring in brain chemicals that carry signals to other part of your body and the brain. Where I differ from these experts is not a difference in definition from NAMI, the APA, or the Mayo Clinic. Where I differ is failing to consider the root cause of these illnesses that has grown into a disorder. We sometimes become so focused upon what we recently discovered that we then stop looking for other possible causes. We sometimes forget that is a difference between having a mental illness and having a mental disorder. In my mind, a mental disorder is like a cold. We all get them, and if we get it diagnosed and in time and receive proper treatment for this, we can remain functional. But when we fail to or refuse to get diagnosed or treated for that cold, it can quickly bloom into pneumonia and become harder to get a handle on. To me, it's the same with a mental illness and a mental disorder. If we continue to deny they exist, and it only affects a few of us, we condemn ourselves to avoiding perhaps the most significant reason we fail at being the best version of ourselves. We deny properly administering to our mental illness and therefore allow it to grow into a disorder. A mental illness can be controlled and managed much better than a disorder. A disorder takes full command of all of our actions, reactions, decisions, and choices because they are believed to be just who we are. And honestly, people, they are not. This disorder, pneumonia, can eventually cause us more harm than good. And yes, in the end, it could even cause our death. Let's examine the thought that researchers suggest that the lineage of genetics is one of the causes of mental illness. Following that, we need to also remember that if it is truly all about a gene, then the idea that we can correct this epidemic by simply removing these genes makes sense, right? History does provide us the answer to this question from the medical procedure called lobotomies. to shock therapy and others. There's a reason that these activities are not at the head of the line when it comes to dealing with people suffering from a mental illness or disorder. In my mind, here's why. I believe that the mind is the most powerful part of the body. It only has one job, and that is to protect the body from stroking out when traumatic events happen in our lives. A traumatic event could be anything from a car accident to a phobia of spiders. What may be traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you, so it differs between individuals. But just because it may not be much to you does not mean that anyone should minimize another's trauma degree. When a traumatic event happens, the mind quickly walls off much of it and only releases these memories when it believes that the body can handle that release. Not to say that dreams may be associated with these releases, but it could be possible. So could this be what the experts mean when they say certain genes may increase the risk of life situations may trigger? Could this be what they mean when they mention the biochemical processes or the neurotransmitters naturally occurring in the brain? Let's say that it is true, and it is what they mean. So how can we explain it? Consider that how you are raised from infancy to adolescence is your normal. That means if you were raised in a family of violence, then seeing a family unit not consumed by violence would make you think that that family is abnormal. Does this make you crazy? No. But societally, it may make you feel abandoned, left out, or a misfit if you later discover that the accepted behavior of families is nonviolent. If you have a death of a loved one and have never recently received a decent enough reason as to why that happened, then you have experienced a trauma. And not being able to properly justify this occurrence will leave you scarred and with a mental issue. The same can be said about any trauma you experience, and even if you only just witnessed it. Now you are left with having to deal with this trauma. But because these things never seem just to happen once, you are now having to deal with multiple traumas at what seems to be the same time. Because you refuse to or fail to get the appropriate help for these things, they continue to grow until one day they become a full-blown disorder. Now, because the disorder is inflexible, it shapes your beliefs, choices, thoughts, feelings, and emotions on all levels. Mental illness is not a man thing. It's not a woman thing. It's not a white thing. It's not a black thing. Trauma-induced mental illness is a human thing. And unless you are a robot and not human, trauma has occurred in your life. And if you have chosen to ignore it and pretend that you are just fine, it will soon, if it hasn't already, grow into a disorder. Now you make decisions based on being hurt by a man, and it now makes you strongly distrust men. Or it has grown into a disorder, so now you have a strong dislike for women because your mother may have committed an unspeakable act that you never voiced or recovered from. You believe in one way to do things because that is the way you were taught. And the fact that others do not believe must mean that they are not only wrong, but now they're your sworn enemy. There are just a few of these massive number of ways a disorder can rule your life, control your destiny, and limit your abilities. These disorders are very formidable and sometimes quite resistant to correction. But just because they are, and there never will be a cure for them, they can be managed, and you can remain functional instead of non-functional. The only choice you need to make when it comes to a mental illness or a disorder, as far as that's concerned, is whether you will own it or allow it to own you. You own it by putting voice to it and seek assistance to find coping skills to better deal with them on a daily basis. Never allow embarrassment or shame to keep you from getting the help you need and the respect you deserve. Be a hero. Ask for help. If you need better evidence than my word, consider this. Even Superman had super friends. Thus ended this lesson. Please don't forget about the quiz. Then take a few minutes to think about what you have just learned before moving on to the next lesson. See you soon.